Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate everyone's time and coming during lunch. My name is Tamer, and I lead growth at SnapInput. And we are here today to talk about something very interesting, which everybody cares about, how to scale your startup and how to achieve product market fit. And I'm very lucky to have three very good guests with me. So Jason is my colleague at SnapInput, Olivia Lee, co-founder of Livium, lead strategist and head of digital fashion at All Star Women's DAO, and Emily Ho, who's head of strategy at Mootiez. So before we get in, product market fit, something that everybody talks about. It's so important to startups. It's so important to scaling. So what is it though? So in your own words, what does product market fit mean to you, and how do you define it?
Thank you, Tamer. For me, product market fit is when teams, founders build a product that solves a problem, and you're able to generate repeat users. From there, if you're able to monetize, even better. The only reason why I don't put monetization as the core indicator for product market fit is, let's say for Instagram when they first started, there wasn't a clear monetization strategy. So effectively, for a product market fit, it's when you can go from aggressively pushing your product to getting more organic inbound. As the saying goes, nobody likes to be sold to, but everyone likes to buy. So if you're able to achieve that with your product, I think it's a good indicator for product market fit.
Super. Let me switch up what my definition is. There are some key points you hit there. So in my opinion, product market fit is really when you, as the builder or the founder of a company, has a really good idea of who your target audience is. So who are you building this product for? And in addition, what's going to get that engagement, retention, and repeat users to keep coming, because you need that for sustainable growth. So for a lot of startups, when you don't have the right product market fit, you are going to come into a lot of problems, in terms of like sustainability, on how to keep the product going. And in addition, you'll find that you'll be switching a lot. And I'm sure that we'll be talking about a bit later. But if you're switching a lot, you're actually really burning a lot of time, resources, money, and such that. So that's my definition of what product market fit is.
Thank you. I guess to not repeat what they have shared, I guess for me, more so on like what I look for in product market fit is how excited are people to use my product without me paying them. So if I don't have to incentivize them every single time to engage with my product or engage with my brand, then it gives me a good idea if my target audience actually likes what I have produced or if they find use for it. So yeah, very simply that for me.
Yeah. Let me just add one more thing. Something that's like indispensable. Like how does this product fit into your everyday life? So it makes your life easier, more convenient, and you really need it without, it's just there. It solves a lot of problems, would be another thing that's a good product market fit.
I'd also like to add that without achieving product market fit, it's difficult to scale because then you're throwing resources at something that you're unsure if it will work or not. Effectively, as Olivia pointed out, you're wasting a lot of resources and time as well.
I really like that. So going back to it is like making sure people find a product they like, they'll use it for free, your resources are being well used, and a lot of other things. But just going to go a little bit deeper in that, Jason, what are some common challenges, right, based on what you do at SnapInput, that startups face when achieving product market fit? Or what are the issues they have?
So for challenges, there's many. I'd like to focus on three of them. I think the first one that comes to mind would be overbuilding features, where you're looking at too many variables and you're building in different directions. You're not validating your assumptions, which leads to, again, resources that are poorly spent. Another thing would be misunderstanding your customers, right? Not doing the proper research, spending time to understand what they really want. And again, that feeds into finding product market fit. Scaling too early as well is something that I mentioned before. If you're scaling without finding product market fit, you're building something that maybe isn't really wanted. I know a lot of founders think they're building the best product out there. Everyone believes that. But if you're not getting repeat users, you're not able to convert your existing users into paying customers, I would really argue, are you building the product for your clients, or are you building the product for yourself? So, yeah.
Yeah, I actually really like that point of like how you're and who you're building for. Actually, that makes me want to go to Olivia next. You know, part of one of many hats that you wear is the co-founder of Livium, which is a consultancy firm. So how do you advise your clients really as a, you know, they found something that's product market fit, or is it just like a temporary spike of interest, or is there no difference in your mind?
That's a really good question. Just a little background in terms of what Livium is. So Livium is an independent consultancy helping companies kind of establish their Web3 kind of presence. And I focus on things like metaverse and digital fashion. So having said that, I generally have two types of clients that I see. One are those that have already established a product and everything is good, but all of a sudden they kind of come into some sort of brick wall, which is that tells me that they didn't have the good product market fit in the first place because they're building, changing, adapting as they go. On the other hand, I also have clients who have already established their product market fit in their product. It's well established, has good brand DNA, there is a need for it in the market, and they might be looking for something which is the next step. How can I create a deeper engagement with already an established audience? So how can I bring them deeper in the world? In this sense, the Web3, because this is the space that I focus in. So in terms of, is it hitting a trend spike, you're saying, or is it like a product market fit, right? So I think I can give a good example that kind of puts this in context. In terms of trends, people like us in, well, at least some of us in Web3, we've seen a lot of trends kind of go ups and downs. So if you remember about 2 years ago, there was just this huge thing in metaverse. And this is the space that I dwell in and I'm deeply passionate about. I also believe in it. And so when you come across a client, which I have, a client in the music industry that completely understands what the metaverse is and they really want to be in it, and that's like music to my ears. You know, finally you don't have to hard sell this person what is the metaverse. They already have an idea of what they want to do, you know? And if you think about it, their idea is like if they're in music industry, they want to tap into the spatial, immersive space. They want to kind of bring in audio with visual. So it's not just like listening, but they want to bring it into a space where it's immersive, where people can gather together, tie in some digital, physical kind of aspects. Music to my ears, you know? So like, let's talk, you know? Like, let's learn more about what this is. So in learning more about this client, it comes very obvious to me that there are certain things that's not established. So in their mind, metaverse, you know, they want to be part of it because it's the latest trend, people are talking about it, they want to be in it. But on the other hand, is their existing kind of situation doesn't really make it good for the metaverse space. It's really a gathering of people that's really engaged in your product and services. So after you ask them the right questions, you know, what are your business goals? What are your target audience? Who are you selling to? What are some kind of things that they're into right now? I can quickly establish that their existing clientele will not be ready for the metaverse. So in that sense, it would not be the right product market for them. And I could have gone ahead and be like, let's build this and test it out anyways. But as a consultant, I also need to think about their long-term and long-term longevity. So in the end, instead of jumping into the metaverse, we establish things that they're missing currently. So talking about Web 2 stuff, like maybe their marketing is still lacking, maybe they haven't really pushed out their community in the best of their ability. So this is the end result. And in the end, we worked on a marketing strategy just to deploy their existing brand awareness at the moment before we jump in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I love the point of really how you're getting feedback from the end user and not just selling them what you could in terms of getting, revenue or anything else. You want to make sure that, their target audience really enjoys and will like and will find benefit in the service. I think that's, yeah. And actually that fits really nicely into what I want to ask you, Emily. So you are, head of strategy for Mootiez, which is a social platform. I'll let you talk more about it, right? But you're building a product. So can you talk a bit more about, for you, getting customer feedback, understanding what users want, their actual interests. Like, how does that affect you in your building or your strategy or how you, deploy tactics?
Yeah, so I think just a bit of background about Mootiez as well. I joined Mootiez, I think, last year. There was a big mission from the founders to reach the mass audience. I think that's a hot word in the Web3 space. How do you reach mass market? And when we were discussing with a lot of corporate partners, we found that their perception of what Web3 can do and their desire to reach that kind of target audience also was misaligned. So we actually went back to the drawing board and started by a lot of conversations with what we believe was a lucrative target market, which was, quote unquote younger people, right? So around 18, 25. We interviewed over like 30 in-person interviews with high school and college students to understand their perception about Web3 and understand what is it that right now that they want when they're engaging online. There's a lot of interesting, I think, feedback we've learned. So, for example, we had a kind of early concept for Mootiez, which was around personality features. So, when we interviewed them, we had the assumption, right, that if we paid them, if there was a giveaway, right, if there was $5, $10 that they can earn by onboarding into Mootiez, that they would be interested. And we asked the 30 or so, subjects. And interestingly, actually, that was the complete opposite of what they shared. They said that if we had paid them, it feels a bit too much like a scam or too much like crypto, actually. That was their exact words. It sounds like crypto. And they had this immediate kind of reaction where they didn't want to touch it. Obviously, I wasn't interviewing, blockchain society university students, which probably would have been the total opposite case, right? And that actually informed for us a lot of kind of key, small, detailed decisions about our product design in the beginning, including, what are the features that we want to emphasize and what are some of our go-to-market strategies to reach this specific audience into basically signing up for accounts that would then be their entryway into Web3.
No, I really like that and the element of the scam and anything else, and how do you build things that intuitively you think that people want, but actually when you ask them, you find out that's the exact opposite and it cheapens the experience. Actually, the next thing I want to ask you all, right? Why do companies fail to find product market fit? Why? And I promise I'm going to keep saying product market fit. But what are the issues? Why do they have troubles? What is the key pain point in this part?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I'll keep it short here. For me, I think fundamentally it has to do with two main things. The first being, I think Emily mentioned it a bit, is the lack of proper research done beforehand, right? So you're jumping in with an assumption. If you continue with this trajectory without pivoting, it could lead to dire consequences. And then effectively, if you're pushing to scale, then ultimately your product is doomed. Another thing, again, has to do with research, is poor product alignment. A lot of times founders think they're building the right thing for their customers, but effectively they're building something that they want. So if you're not doing the research, you're not listening to feedback loops, it's kind of hard to find product market fit, and that's ultimately why I think so many startups don't do very well.
I don't like sitting in the middle because you've answered everything I wanted to say. Just kidding. But I think a lot of companies do fail is partly because, we talked about trends. Sometimes they're just like, wait a second, this is the next big thing. Like AI, let's all jump in, you know what I mean? And it's open source, so let's do something. And it's good on them. So some of them is because they found it, obviously they think this is the next big thing. They want to jump in while it's hot. They want to be the first players, so they jump in. And that's actually a good thing. It's better than you overthinking, over-strategizing, because if you spend so much time writing a business plan, all that stuff, it might have shifted by the time you actually start building or getting a team together. Now, having said that, I think there are probably three reasons. So one I've just mentioned, they're overzealous. They just want to jump in without the research that Jason covered. Second is they probably like overestimate the demand, because who's going to build something and think they're not going to sell it? You know, like of course they have this idea that this is going to be the best idea, you know? So they overestimate demand. Second, as I mentioned, they just jump in without too much planning. Third one is like, they probably underestimate the need for constant iteration. Like product market fit isn't a one-time done deal. It's like every stage along the way, you need to assess and look at some kind of real insights to see if this is the right thing. So like you said, even from a product design point of view, maybe certain things each step along the way. And because consumers' behaviors change, their need from a company may change, so it's never going to be just linear. So I think that's probably what I think.
I think for me, I'll talk maybe more on like some of the, I call them like false signals. I think, honestly speaking, right, majority of startups fail. And unfortunately, I think a huge reason startups fail is because, especially with product market fit, we don't think enough like scientists, and then we focus on the wrong signals. So I think one wrong signal that I notice a lot in Hong Kong is that people see big name corporate backing or partnerships as a sign of product market fit. Like, oh, that startup is working with these major companies, surely they must be fine, right? And maybe in a B2B SaaS product, potentially, you have some form of success with that. I think obviously depending on what startup, but especially in Web3, I think the common issue is that then your key stakeholder is misaligned, because now instead of servicing your users, you're trying to service those corporate partners. And if any of you have ever worked with a corporate partner at an early stage startup, that is one of the hardest things to do, because you are servicing not just the innovation team in that corporate, but you're also servicing their superiors and then their global superiors in not even Hong Kong, right? So I think that's one huge sign of false product market fit. And unfortunately, it gives startups so much of a confidence boost that they just forget that that's not actually how you're going to reach it. And I think too, be careful of, signs of early traction. So sometimes I think some companies have a lot of resources to do marketing, and they do marketing well. As you know, sometimes marketing is kind of a money game. So if you're able to get a top, content partner or influencer to promote your product on launch, of course you're going to expect a certain result. But it doesn't mean that the people who buy into it are going to like it. I won't give any examples because let's not put any out there. But
no shade.
But I think you might be able to think about some time when your favorite influencer has promoted something, and it just doesn't mean that either you like it or that after you've tried it once, you'll go back to it. So, but at that point, if you've spent that money already, it makes it very hard for a startup to then, like Olivia said, do the iterations you need to do. So that's number 2, I think, is a huge warning sign. And I think the last one is not talking enough with your users while you launch. So I think especially in Web3 space, there's this huge pressure to launch with success, because otherwise you lose the hype. There's also a huge assumption that's made about Web3 because it's such a cool tech, right? Doesn't everybody want decentralization? Doesn't everybody want to own their digital asset? But I frankly asked, it's okay, well, how many people actually want that? If there was no money to be earned from that token, would you buy it, right? So I think that question has to be something you think about, because if you just launch and then you never talk with your users, you never try to understand why your community wants to be with your product if they don't make any money, you're likely not going to be working on your product enough to create something that they want in the long run. So I think, unfortunately, a lot of startups really skip these 3 things. They are chasing after that big corporate partner, and then they chase after that marketing money, and then they chase after a successful go-to-market launch, and then once it's done once and it fails, game over, right? Okay, that means it's not successful. But that's not the case, right? For example, I don't know, sometimes tweaks, sometimes changes, sometimes just things that you can improve throughout your flow and product could make all the difference. There's a lot of examples of that if you look at successful companies. So yeah, I would say that's probably hard. I mean, obviously it's hard because all startups have a runway. You have a limited time to make it work. So, try to do all of that smart and wisely. But yeah, like you said, holding on to those false signals are probably, in my mind, the sure way to fail.
No, I really liked it, like the idea of false signals and also Olivia's point as well about, it's not like a one-time fit all for product market fit. It's really something that evolves in everything else. And I want to keep going with Emily's point on, specifically startups, right? So, in startup land, like there's a very popular, methodology, thought process of the fail fast model, right? Which, in really high level, it just means you try to launch a product as quickly as possible, and you get it to market, and then you get immediate feedback, and then based on that, you tweak or you pivot or you go, and then you keep going. I guess the question is really, is this process really work in a place like Hong Kong or APAC? Do you think it is? And is there any other types of methodologies or things that people could think of? Like, I think SnapInput, we talk about learn fast model. But yeah, just want to kind of start on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. Big fan of fail fast and lean startup models, but it's not without its limitations. First and foremost, failing is something that nobody likes as humans. So if you're continuously failing, one thing that does pop up is burnout. So if you're not padding that with some wins, it could lead to mental breakdown and then just erosion of the entire team. I think if we're talking about the fail fast model, and I know you mentioned failing fast and iterations, I think it's important to take a step back and also analyze why that failed, right? Not just completely pivoting, but looking at your metrics, looking at your results in case further along down the line, you encounter something similar. I think that instead of just fail fast, you could look at learn fast, right? And part of what we do at SnapInput is deploying questions, assumptions, so that they can be validated by live audiences. So you don't have to build in the dark. If turns out it's not something that is wanted, you can learn what is actually wanted with follow-up questions and build. So I think learn fast would be a more sustainable methodology that would probably work better in a place like Hong Kong.
Cool. I'm not a big fan of the fail fast, maybe because I'm very like a empathetic person. Like I'm on the human touch side of things, like not the tech build, like let's build it, push it out. I like the one-on-one, getting to understand someone's problem and how to fix it. That's sort of the thing that I like the most. But I think fail fast is like an afterthought. It's like let's just jump in blindly and see what happens. And as you mentioned, like there's like the churn rate, your runway, like you're just going to be burning through a lot of resources. So people who do the fail fast are pretty much like, let's see what happens. Let's learn and fix it as we go. And basically, it's back to our topic. They don't know their product market fit. They're just blindly checking and burning a lot of resources while they're doing, That's just my general opinion. But in terms of like learn fast, I like that better. Because that kind of implies it's like an ongoing process. It's like a conscious way of building a business. You actually want to solve a problem. You're not just pushing a product out there because the market's hot and let's do it now. It's about understanding your clientele. It's maybe taking stuff like SnapInput, like surveys and stuff to kind of understand each step along the way. Like you said, the assumptions, because you're making a lot of assumptions along the way. Should I build this feature first? Should I build this feature first? So there's a lot of assumptions there. So I think with Learn Fast, it's more about like analyzing, taking real data, getting to know feedback, real-time feedback, and build as we go. But at the same time, the first time you do it will not be the one, but you consciously make an effort and not make that mistake again. So I can give you a quick example about for the metaverse space in terms of the learn fast. So a lot of fashion brands jump into the metaverse space, so I call it immersive commerce. I can name some. They've done amazing things. So fashion brands like Hugo Boss, Lacoste, Lalique, they've all jumped into the metaverse space. very early, actually. And I mean, I think it was a great thing because, first of all, some people might think it flopped. Oh, what happened to this metaverse, immersive commerce? There's really not a lot of news. That's because we're quite early as well. But these brands took the kind of idea of, let's learn about this while we can. There's probably not a lot of players in it yet, so if we do fail, it may be very quiet. You're probably not sinking a lot of dollars into it as well because there's just so many different ways to do it. But brands like that jumped into the metaverse and they probably learned right away what are the customer engagement, what's going to make them stay, is it a gaming mechanism that's going to make them stay, do I have to give them freebies, do I tie it into a real world activation, like all of these things enabled them to learn quickly and surely. So what that means is when their real target customers are ready to jump into the metaverse space, they're probably able to do a full-fledged campaign and make it very seamless, probably get all of the results they want because all along they've been learning what their customers want. So you're not jumping blindly when all of a sudden the whole world's jumping in. You've already done your dues. You've already learned from some of the areas and fixing it. So I think I like the learn fast methodology a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, agree with everything said. I think maybe it's a mindset shift, right? I think sometimes in conventional startup world, like you look at guys like, you know, Elon and like Gary Vee and everybody aspires to that, right? But I think in reality, like as a team, you really need to think like you're a marathon runner and a scientist all at once. Every single assumption you have is either right or wrong, and it's not personal, right? Like, so you might think, oh my God, people will love this, but it turns out to be wrong, and the more you dwell on that, the harder you'll actually figure out a solution and retry. I have personally seen that a lot. And so I think, I think it's helpful as a team when you look at all the assumptions you're making to just treat them as hypotheses, like you're in a lab and you're actually just testing. And then you make sure when you're testing it, you leave enough resources so that you don't burn and fail, right? Like even that failure is a test that you have accounted for so that you can adjust and keep adjusting until you get to a place where your theories and your hypotheses are getting to a higher alignment to your desired result. And yeah, I think the question always is like, I think startups need to really think about what tools they're using to do that work. A scientist is not just going to be going to a park and look at the bugs and then be like, got it. You need tools. You need the right tools. You need the right data-driven tools, metric tools, qualitative, quantitative data. All of that matters at the beginning, all the way from the start when you're concepting to when you have your soft launches. You need to just make sure that everything that you're doing is an assumption. And it's hard because most people go into startups thinking, well, I have, all this experience, I've been this, I've done that. But in reality, you're creating something new and there's always going to be like uncertainties there. So aside from quantitative data, I guess, I guess that's what we're talking about today, which I think quantitative data is very important as well. So make sure you hear from people directly, right? And a lot of times what they'll tell you and what you're trying to get is not just what, but the why. The data will tell you what they're doing, but you want to know why, right? So if people are dropping off, why are they dropping off? If people don't want to pay for your product, why? If people don't like certain, if people are not engaging with your posts, why? And it could be just that your target audience is wrong. We've seen that as well in startup space where your product actually just fits a whole different market. And unless you're really attacking this as a scientist, you're probably not going to get there.
Yeah, I like the idea of being scientific, asking questions, getting data points, and using that in order to kind of measure engagement and everything else. Jason, maybe just for you specifically, I'm not going into talking about the product that much, but SnapInput does use microsurveys to tools and information. Can you just talk about the thought process for customers or why people would benefit from things like data tools, or why do people like the service?
Absolutely. I think with a tool like SnapInput, where you're able to continuously ask questions to make improvements to your product, it's the lifeblood of many products. I think Olivia mentioned that product market fit is not just a one-time thing. You're continuously asking and improving. I'll give you an example. One of the case studies that we did that I hold quite dear is with a luxury French fashion brand. I can't really name them because of NDAs. Some of you guys might know them. They've got red bottom shoes. And for them, they found a lot of success in the early 2000s, massive success actually. And for them, they were trying to reach a younger demographic, right? And what they did with SnapInput is they had a couple assumptions. So every quarter, they would spend a big budget on hosting an exclusive event. And they did that for many, many years. And the younger team members weren't quite entirely convinced that this would be the right approach, especially if they're trying to reach a younger audience. So what we did at SnapInput was deploy a question in either or format. And the question was, would you rather attend an exclusive VIP event, or would you prefer a one-of-one shoe that was limited? And actually, the results were quite surprising. Only about 30% of respondents cared about the VIP event. So you can already imagine this greatly shifted how that budget was spent for that quarter. Had they not deployed this survey, they would have never been able to find this out and pivot from what they were doing, right? So ultimately, by deploying micro-surveys, you're able to continuously learn and continuously iterate, especially if you're trying to enter a new market that you might not be entirely comfortable with.
Actually, going on, my next question is for Olivia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But just kind of going further with like using like data or information and kind of getting customer insights. For you in your role at Livium, how important is things like data to your end clients, like in making decisions and kind of going forward and deciding, what strategies to input, like how important do larger companies or corporates or anything else, how important is data and qualitative or quantitative data to them?
I mean, data is very important, but not every startup have access to it, right? I mean, most of these data are like historical data. So you're paying big bucks for market research just to gauge if you should enter that market in the first place. And not a lot of people would spend that money because they'd rather use that to do another part of their build. That's just from my opinion. But with something like SnapInput, it's been really great product, I must admit, because I've been using it for the last couple of months. And it certainly has changed a lot of strategies. It certainly changed a lot of where time should be spent on certain things, especially when you are a startup and you don't have a lot of time or resources and you have to pick and choose your battles as it comes, you know what I mean? So these are the assumptions you make. What should I do? Should I build it all at the same time or should I build one at a time? But having what Jason said, perhaps I'll share an example of, not from my client, but I guess I am working with 2 clients on this. I have a digital t-shirt collection coming out. And because I'm in digital fashion, the reason why I got into digital fashion is because I believe it's going to be one of the ways that's going to stop some of the problems with fashion, which I love a lot. It's going to prevent fashion waste. And why does fashion waste come about? Of course, there's over-excessive consumption, but there's also overproduction, So using this as sort of the context, I use SnapInput to really understand this new audience, what do they want from this product, basically. So it was actually a really simple, good tool to help me figure out in terms of overproducing. I don't want to spend too much making a lot of quantity because I love my product, I love the design. I want to make it just enough to do what my objective is. And my objective for the digital collection is to get more people to understand what Web3 is in terms of the benefits and the usability from physical to digital. Okay, I'm not going to go into that. So I use SnapInput to ask something super simple, like in terms of size assortment, because essentially I don't want to have like extra large, medium, large, extra large. So I just kind of narrowed down to which one would a woman prefer. Myself, I love fashion, so I can do slim fit or unisex boxy fit. But I wanted to see in general what are my women target audience, what's their preference. And it gave me really good insight. But on top of that, it also saved me a lot of time because is a digital collection, right? So my mind is thinking about what are all the cool elements I can do in terms of this digital t-shirt collection. You know, it's going to have a digital product passport. It's going to unlock an NFT. It's going to give you a skin gaming item. It's going to go into the metaverse and you can unlock. It goes on. It goes on. My mind is going crazy thinking about that kind of stuff. But using SnapInput because it's very accessible, I asked a very, very important question. And the question was something like, would you rather have a physical item that gives you real-world benefits? That is like something you can wear, maybe it gives you access to a concert, let's say if it's a concert t-shirt. Or would you rather have a phygital t-shirt that gives you a lot of digital elements that unlocks a lot of things and interoperability in the metaverse? Okay, comes back. The result was actually not what I expected, you know, because I'm thinking Web3 all the time. It was 70% would prefer to have the physical shirt with real-world benefit. And what that tells me right off the bat is, well, firstly is this audience still don't understand so much about the phygital element, but this is exactly why I'm doing the t-shirt, that's one. Secondly is it also kind of like helps me kind of prevent me from overproducing or focusing so much on the digital element side and forget about what they want. So maybe I should focus a little bit more time on finding real partnership. You know, like real partnership in real life that gives them that real world benefit. So that actually saves me a lot of time. You know, so.
Yeah, I think, thank you so much for saying nice stuff about us. But no, I think maybe just to Emily, right? Can you share a bit about like, you know, user feedback and microsurveys and how they've kind of adjusted your use of products, use of features, use of like, you know, interface, like how have you used this kind of data for your own like growth and build now?
I mean, I shared earlier how, like, in the early stage of concepting the product, we used the microsurveys to talk with a lot of users, basically. I think specifically, maybe in a Hong Kong context, like, as you guys mentioned, I think earlier, actually for many startups, especially we are in social, Hong Kong is not a big enough market. So, unfortunately, the product that we were building, as much as I talked in person to, like, Hong Kong students, I knew that we could not just target Hong Kong. Firstly, I mean, in Hong Kong, you have to localize Chinese, Cantonese. Your social posting will all be Chinese as well. And secondly, I think with 7 million, you can calculate in your head, right? Like, for a social product, we really needed our app to be able to reach a larger audience. So the hard part is, there are, as a startup, I don't have people all over the world. I have an idea, having worked in corporations before, what different countries think about. But yeah, as Olivia said, data gets old fast. Data from 2023 is awesome, but it's not 2024, and it's definitely not telling me about 2025. So when we were first starting into Mootiez, and we knew that we needed to have an audience base with some of the key, target countries in mind, we actually didn't really have a direct way. We had talked with, potential people who could hook us with high school students, college students, but when you're an early stage startup, like, all of that is great, but you have to kind of evaluate what's your best, easiest, like time efficient way to get that feedback, right? And a lot of times partners they want you to sponsor something, and that just wasn't money that we could afford. So I think that's where something like SnapInput was really helpful, because we just really needed an idea of what people around the country or around the world could do at a price or at a reasonable, I think, offering that we can access anytime. So all of those were factors that we needed, and I think. For example, one example I could share probably is like when we were first thinking about Mootiez and exactly what we were, how we will hook people. We asked a lot of different questions to the audience, and I think we were able to get, from our responses from like over 30 countries, and we were asking questions like maybe I think I shared this example, but if we gave you $10 each, right, would you? If you had ways to earn money, would you? If you had ways to, like gamify, would you? And we found that for all of them, we were overcomplicating things for a lot of people in different countries. So we even asked, like, do we need to localize, right? And we find that actually a lot of kids are using Google Translate anyways. So we didn't have to even spend that money. And so in the end, thanks to all of this, actually when we first soft launched, we were able to go viral actually on TikTok. Hong Kong doesn't have TikTok, but thanks to this, we knew that TikTok was going to be a useful account. Thanks to VPN, we got onto TikTok. Thanks to this, we found out, no, working with specific content partners was probably our easiest and most cost-efficient way. And we were able to bring on over 100,000 users in the beginning, right, over 2 months with like a CAC, cost of user acquisition, of less than 10 cents US dollars. So for a startup, that meant everything to us because getting that initial user opened the door to like all the feedback and data that we needed to validate and let us know what we should do next.
Yeah, okay. That's really, really interesting, and I really love how data and information is really, especially forward-looking information, it's so difficult to get at a reasonable price point. I think kind of starting to round things out, right? Like we are in Cyberport right now, which is like the the Web3 center of Hong Kong and everything else. So what advice would you give to a startup, specifically in Web3, for how to find product market fit, how they should be thinking about things, how they should be engaging in certain things? Yeah, just any advice you would have for them.
Yeah, of course, have to go back to SnapInput. Because Web3 changes so quickly and so drastically, oftentimes using traditional means for market research just doesn't cut it. It takes way too long. I would say for startups in Web3, definitely, if you have the tools, use them. SnapInput is here for that. Test aggressively, pivot quickly, and learn from your errors. Because failure to do that will result in your product burning through your runway, and before you know it, I mean, the entire project has to shut down. And I mean, maybe not just for Web3 startups, but startups in general, found that a lot of times when founders successfully raise, they'll go on a spending splurge, right? They'll be like, oh, I've got so much firepower, I've got so much in reserves, I can afford to do all this. But even if you were to raise $2 million, $3 million, that dries up really quickly. So capital preservation, definitely. Test, understand what you're building. Are you really building for your audience, or are you building for yourself? If you're building for yourself, if it aligns, you're able to monetize, great. But if you're not, you really have to pivot, because failure to do so will result in your company shutting down. As Emily pointed out, the startup ecosystem is littered with fallen startups. So yeah.
Good advice. I will keep it short. I think get to know your customers. Got your product market fit, you created a solution, you got retention, engagement, keep knowing more about those customers, kind of find ways to get their feedback, right? Maybe use a tool like SnapInput to get feedback for the next move. Be open-minded to changes, be ready to pivot when you need to, and always constantly assess your product market fit. And lastly, use SnapInput.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think probably just be very clear on who is your real target audience. For Web3, I think the Web3 itself is a target audience, so be very mindful when you say things like, I want to reach a bigger mass market. Like, Web3 audience is a very specific type of audience. Their motivation is very specific. So, yeah, I think be very clear. Just be hyper niched out, on exactly who it is you're trying to build for, because, yeah, I think like every niche, I think requires something very different, and sometimes that's beyond what we imagine. It's not really always something we even already think about. So it's very important to keep your feedback loop open.
Thank you so much. I think we're about time. We'll wrap it up. I think before we end, thank you again for your time. If there's anything you want to plug, information, where they can find you, anything you want to talk about, I mean, this is the last kind of chance.
Yeah, I mean, do check us out. We do offer a free trial. You can pop in your first question. We'll be able to generate insights for you. We utilize Skylar. That's our proprietary bot. So everything's automated. That's the only part of AI that we use. So give us a try, www.snapinput.com. You're able to put in your first question completely free of charge.
All right, cool. I spent a lot of time deep diving into all areas related to retail, fashion, and beauty in the Web3 ecosystem. So I spent a lot of time writing. So I'd love for you to follow if you want to learn more about retail, how it's going to be the future of retail, and what are some of the innovation that's going to be used. Follow me on LinkedIn under Olivia Lee.
I guess for Mootiez, we're still quite early projects, so we're still building out our core features right now with a growing and strong community, especially in young people who like niche subcultures. So, music, in TV, in movies, and celebrities. So, if you're working alongside in that space, feel free to reach out to me on my LinkedIn as well. Always happy to connect and talk about how we can reach that demographic and audience together.
Great. Thank you so much. I guess if there's no questions. Okay. No worries. Thank you so much. Really appreciate everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.